Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Occult Explorers. I'm Snappy, and I'm joined today by my co-host and dear friend Dion, as well as our special guest, Dr. Shay deMontford. How's it going, guys?
Hi, good, thank you.
Beautiful. How are you, Dion? You're muted, my friend.
Life is beautiful.
So please bear with us this morning or this afternoon. We've been having some audio issues with our poor friend Shay here. She's now joining us on her cell phone. So this is infinitely better than what it was. So please have some patience. But we're going to have a lot of fun. I'm really excited to be here with you guys for part 6 of our deep dive into the Gothic subculture. And this is going to be sort of our final episode. Dion?
Yes, yeah.
What do you got in store for us for this particular?
Oh, today will be fun. We'll roam around. We'll have a little Dracula, some gilderais, and a few other interesting people will pop up.
Amazing, amazing. And for people just joining us, this is part 6 of our deep dive, and we've been exploring the occulted roots of the Gothic subculture, starting with the Batcave and the punk scene in that 80s music scene, and going back down into the roots. And now we're coming into the Middle Ages. And in our last episodes, we had kind of set the scene of all of this wildness, this occulted vision, the rebellion, the magical feminine, the dark feminine aspect of it all, right? What is your take been so far, Shay, on our deep dives?
I think it's been so good to not only share with the general public the history of Gothic culture, but to share with the goth scene as well. I've been talking to so many of my friends who are in the goth scene, and a lot of people that I was with in the goth scene now are very senior, and they still don't know their own history. They still don't know that this is a long legacy of rebellion that's produced massive positive changes in society. And yeah, we really should honor that history.
Absolutely. And that's what we've been doing, right? We've been examining these kind of cultural and literary roots that have informed the Gothic culture. And we are understanding now that this Gothic culture has existed since that Middle Ages. Oftentimes people want to disconnect it from that kind of time period and rather set it in a more modern sense. But really, it has its roots in this history of rebellion, that left hand path, magical occultism, and especially queer and feminist spaces and people who were forced to rebel, right, and challenge the status quo of those old Western systems. So, really powerful stuff. But let's get into it, I guess. What do we got in store today, Dean?
Well, first of all, trigger warning in case we talk about sensitive subjects here. Here we're starting with Sarah Bernhardt as Hamlet. And this is an interesting photograph because it encapsulates a lot of different layers here. First of all, people understand Hamlet, the story itself. And as well, you would know that Shakespearean actors were all male originally, no females. And here she's playing a male character. That's part of the theme as well, one of our sub-themes. And she's holding the skull. And this is they did a 2-minute movie, 1900, where they recorded the actors' voices on a wax cylinder that would be played back during the performance. And if you remember Hamlet, Ophelia, and we looked at the paintings of Ophelia last time.
Right. We had that in the water dying. Yeah.
And with that said, go to the next image of Sarah.
I don't know if anybody else has lost Dion's sound, but I can't hear Dion.
You can't hear Dion?
No.
We can hear him pretty clearly on our end.
Yeah.
You're coming in a bit echoey, but
yeah, weird issues today. Some weird issues.
So you can't hear Dion at all? Can you try speaking, Dion?
Yeah. Well, if we could, let's see if we have some more pictures of Sarah. But I had sent them to you at the last minute, so maybe they'd get included. The one with her in a coffin.
Gonna go
Oh,
to
well,
the.
I don't think I have that. Her in a
Okay, yeah,
coffin.
you didn't add them. Okay.
Sorry.
So, but so if you know,
Pull it up maybe in Discord if you sent it there. Oh, I only got the one. Sorry. But I can bring this up 1 second here.
all right. Well, what it is, it's a famous picture that Sarah did, a famous seance where she staged a seance, and part of the scene was she was in a coffin because there was times that Sarah would sleep in a coffin.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah. There's more to the story with Sarah Bernhardt. Her as Hamlet is just a jumping off point there.
Yeah, I know that she was like a famous 19th century French actress, but I don't really know her story per se.
Oh yeah, definitely. She was into the occult.
Oh, here we go.
There she is right there. And this is from a seance that they staged in France. And you could see the statue, the bust up at the top.
Oh, is that Pan or Lucifer?
It could be Pan or Dionysus with the boistrocos, with the curls on top, or even a Hermes. But here she is in the coffin, because she often would sleep in a coffin because she liked the occult. And there was another picture. I don't know if you got the other picture that was next to it.
Yeah, I can bring it up. I got it here 1 second, but
all right.
You want to start describing it there.
And this one's pretty important because she was also into sculpting besides being an actress.
Okay.
And in this next image, it's a sculpture she did of herself as a chimera.
Oh wow. Okay.
Which you'll be seeing.
Yeah, let's see. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So there you go.
Yeah, that's Sarah Bernhardt, self sculpture.
Oh wow, that is really cool. It's like that's a self sculpture of her, some kind of
chimera.
Demon. Chimera.
Yeah, as a demon. Yes.
I love how
this is
like
Sarah Bernhardt. Sarah Bernhardt, the famous French actress, would sculpt herself as demons and sleep in a coffin.
Oh wow. That's so wild.
I don't know if you noticed, but you got another window that keeps opening.
I took it down. I'm not sure what's going on with Shay here, what she's trying to do.
She's doing some witchcraft there.
All right. Seems to be working.
Good.
Oh, I can't hear you though. You're muted. Still no audio now.
What the hell's going on?
Do we need to have both up?
I don't know how this is doing it.
Oh, you're so quiet.
Right. Turn the volume up. I'll turn this volume up.
Oh, interesting.
Oh dear, good fun. It's always good fun, isn't it? So, camera. There we go. I got rid of that. Can you hear me now? No, can't hear me. No audio.
Yeah, I can barely hear you.
Is that better?
Oh, yes.
Is that better? Okay.
Yes. Okay, I think we're...
I'm using the camera on my computer, the audio on my phone. And I think you just got to close that other spare window. And I think maybe we might be good.
Yeah, it's just if I take it down, then all of a sudden your voice comes off. So we got to have it... can I... Yeah, try saying something.
Something? Can you hear me?
Yeah, so we have to have that little icon there. But hey, you know what? It's working. It's working.
Well, I'm so sorry about this, guys. I will do further research this week to see what's going on with it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's wild. But hey, we're here. We're making it work. And we got this wild chimera image by Sarah Bernhardt. Are you familiar with Sarah Bernhardt by chance? Or You heard
Oh
of
yes.
this
Oh,
actress?
absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. I do a little bit of acting myself. So I'm in a few movies and things. And I think Dion's in the movie industry. I think anybody in the movie industry or in the acting industry's heard of Sarah Bernhardt. Yeah.
Yeah, wild stuff here. Okay.
Mhm.
So what do we got here, Dion?
All right. This is an image, painting of Beatrice Cenci from 1599, when she was murdered or died. Part of, and the thing with her, I didn't know much about her at first, but she's influenced Antoro, Dumas,
Antonin Artaud and Dumont. Okay, wow.
and Shelley wrote a works based on her. Her story's insane. She was tortured and she was kidnapped by her father and raped and tortured.
Oh,
She was
wow.
eventually made a saint, and then they tortured her too, and they decapitated her. And part of it, the story is, and they did it on 9/11. This is we talk about 9/11. Well, there's a famous other 9/11 in the cult. And like I said, Antonin Artaud, Alexander Dumas, Percy Shelley. And so much so that Caravaggio was influenced by her death. He witnessed her decapitation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, her influence on a lot of writers and works is a lot of people don't know. I didn't know as much about her, but her story is pretty sad. You can see why it's when people get her story and get into the details of it. A lot of rape, torture, murder, and just the church. And it became fertile ground for a lot of poets and a lot of artists, including Caravaggio, which we talked about in the Gothic paintings. That's the pre-Raphaelite. People were influenced by him as well.
Right.
So go to the next image. All right. This is 1518, because that was 1519 or 1599. 1518, Strasbourg, Alsace. You might have heard of the St. Vitus dance.
Right. Yes. This is where these people, we still don't know exactly what caused it, but they went mad and hundreds of people danced until they died. Just couldn't stop. And modern modern doctors speculate that it was related to ergot poisoning, because ergot can have kind of really wild effects from kind of wild seizures and motions and even necrosis of the flesh and madness, but we also know that ergot is used, or is also by many scholars said to be one of the ingredients in the kukion, right? So and we know it does become the creator of LSA and LSD later on. So wild stuff.
Well, and there's more to this. Okay, and we'll unpack this, because you could have the alchemical formula into that paragraph right there. Now, if we were to zoom on that image in the background, you'll have the devil in the very back behind the tree.
Oh, pulling the strings. Yeah, I can see him right there.
And you'll see the lady who's dancing. That's Frau Trophia, because it all started with this lady who would go into convulsions in these dances. Well, notice the stick she's holding with the gourd tied to it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
It looks like a knapsack. Is that a cynic knapsack? Or one of those that's
that's a gourd. She's holding a gourd that's tied to a stick, and the gourd could carry something like a kykeon.
Right.
That you're talking about, something that you would drink, and the pilgrims would carry that on the Camino de Santiago, the pilgrimage. And it deals with St. John as well, because St. John was one of the patron saints, along with St. Vitus, of the to cure this form of convulsive dancing. Now, some people posit that some people had a disease or had ergotism, and the other people would join in.
Yes.
And then people would start playing music. And then they would start having a psychosomatic thing and freak out, and everyone would just freak out and start dancing in a Dionysic ritual. But there is more to the ergotism, because St. Vitus, go to the next image. There's St. Vitus right there in a pot. We've talked before in several episodes about ergot, about how even Abby Hoffman, who created LSD, said if you wanted to do it naturally in ancient times, you would strew the ergot or the wheat on hot oil Remember when it would separate the alkaloids to collect. It's a primitive way to get LSA other than feeding the wheat to the cows and getting the urine or the milk. But Saint Vitus and Saint John, his head is decapitated as well. And here you have Saint Vitus in the pot, like Iason.
It's a brazen bowl. You notice that pot in this painting is a bowl. It's got bull
Yeah,
legs.
well, that's part of that. That's Solomon's those lavieres, the pot, the washing pot, but also to burn off immortality, Medea.
Yeah, exactly.
In the pot, it's part of it. Even this is a famous motif. But
absolutely, like Jason, you're right. They boil him in order to grant him the protection from the dragon. Yeah.
And medically with St. Vitus dance, these days when they study it, they're not 100% sure. They feel it was either something that they drank because it started as a religious fervor. So it started with the churches. So they're going, was it something that they actually caught while they were all in these confined spaces together, or was it something they were sharing? Right. So, and the ergot theory, or some sort of brew that the churches were making to give them a religious ecstasy in these churches, is thought to be, so it may not have been ergot, it could have been some sacred mushroom or something that they were using in these churches, because it appeared contagious, because it started in these big gatherings in these churches, and they were calling it a religious fervor at the time. Yeah. So it seemed contagious. Yeah. So it was very interesting. They still are completely mystified by it today. And of course, they've named a congenital disease, St. Vitus dance, over it, where people can't control their jerky movements from childhood. But yeah, the actual medical studies that they've done on it to try and work it out is like, well, we know what the symptoms were. We have no idea how it came about. Yeah.
We also know that one of the things that Dion and I have talked about several times is the German purity laws, and this is one of the foundational texts of the Germanic society, and that's in the 15th century, the first, as a result of these Saint Vitus's dances, because they saw that it may not have been ergot, but the society thought that there was something that was poisoning them. And there was this grander fear of all this ergot. And we know that this was brought on also by this rabid Protestantism that was out to wipe out these earlier religious cult groups by taking control of the grain and insisting on grain purity. One of the things that they did was they got rid of older cultivars. They got rid of different types of grain. And this falls into, several scholars have these theories that part of the reason we have trouble recreating some of these kukions or these different drug recipes is because they were using specially cultivated forms of grain that were developed in order to produce specific forms of ergot, and that these specific species or subspecies, these cultivars, were lost due to things like these Germanic purity movements because of these kind of events where you have these spreads of these contagions.
Reinheitsgebot. It's you can only have the 4 ingredients in there, and it was brewers and bakers were now it was up to them to keep the ergot out of the beer and the bread.
Yeah.
And it's ironic that the ergots are the back of the horse's hoof on the threshing floor, that they would even get ergotism themselves, the horses. Then they would trample on the threshing floors to separate the wheat, and ergotized wheat would collect in the back of their hoofs, and they called those little sections ergot back there.
Yeah.
And they can take those off. And it's funny because there's formulas in the 1500s in cookbooks, Italian cookbooks and English cookbooks, to cook these ergots in hot oil.
Yeah, in order to get that transfer, like Abby, we've talked about this a few times, right? And then the ergot, we also know connects to the French, the argot, the thieves' cant. This is all connected to this underground kind of drug trade, underground suppressed cultures and religions. The thieves' cant, right? It's wild, wild stuff.
Or some people call it the dragon's tongue, which will play into this episode as a sub theme. Hit the next image.
Oh, is that Radhu?
Oh, you know who that is?
Yeah, from
Yeah,
Vlad the Impaler's brother.
handsome brother, the handsome one.
Well, his name, Vojtchi means prince. I'll butcher the Romanian. Selfumos, which Prince Charming, basically. He was a prince, and the name translates to charming. He basically Prince Charming. Now, I bring up Radu. You know, he died 1475 because all this Dracula mythology that people talk about in Vlad Tepes, there's another side to it. How he ended up that way. It's trauma-based childhood. What would turn him into that? And part of it is, and so a lot of people may know the story or not, but him and his little brother were kidnapped, are given by their father as a trade or bribe to the Sultan as little kids. And they were, besides being trained in multiple language and mathematics, they were molested. And so there's a lot of theories about it. So the Sultan, Mehmed II, Vlad Tepes, this is Vlad Tepes' brother right here. Actually, go to the next image. We'll show Vlad, his brother. So there's Dracula. So Dracula had a little brother. Him and his little brother were kidnapped as a kid, or sent to the Sultan, trained and lived there, and were molested and, beat up, traumatized. Dracula comes back. Well, the little brother stays, has a love affair with the Sultan. The Sultan even writes poetry about him, Radu, the handsome. And eventually, the Sultan goes back to fight and take over Romania and helps the little brother come back to take it over. When they get there, he has put stakes on poles and people heads on poles and things that we know Dracula, the famous mythology. Go to the next image and you'll see these are wood cuttings from, back German wood cuttings in the 1500s that showed him eating dinner while people were on stakes. That's what the famous Dracula is famous for that. But what people don't know is after that, the Sultan came back and they kicked his ass. And his little brother took over. Prince Charming took over, not Dracula. And you know what they did with Vlad Tepes' head, Dracula's head? They cut it off and sent it back to the Sultan.
Yeah.
Wow.
But these posters, these woodcut posters were put around, and they're well-known propaganda.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was bloodthirsty. He was, well renowned for being a bloodthirsty person. But whether or not he actually sat and watched, as people were impaled, but impaling was his favorite form of deterring the Turks, because, it was an impure burial that made it hard for them to get into heaven. But it was, whether or not he actually sat there,
Oh, it's very exaggerated.
Yeah,
that's how we did Dracula. It has to be exaggerated.
He was the Pope's best tool to keep the Turks out, but the Pope was scared of him. Like they put a propaganda campaign about him. So, yeah.
Right, because he's Orthodox. It's like you're not a Muslim, but you're also not Catholic. Right, and this is the big thing. And also it was the constant thing at this time in Romania was near constant changing of kingships and this constant tribal warfare, these blood feuds, these endless blood feuds. And we have to see Dracula coming out of this this confluation of really intense warfare and tribalism, where he's got to construct an image of fear. He's got to, he's a small nation and the Ottomans are going to come descend upon him. And his own people are wanting to kill him and replace him. And it's like, he's got to make everyone afraid of him or he's toast. And he has also such resentment, such anger towards the Ottomans, and that comes out in so many of the stories. Like many of us are familiar with that famous story, in traditional society, when you have the envoys, the messengers, these are protected class. You're not allowed to hurt them. And, one of the envoys of the Sultan comes to the court of Vlad, and Vlad tells him to remove his turban. And the man says no, So Vlad has it hammered into his head. Now, again, this may be more propaganda, but it's these kinds of stories seem to have been cultivated about him, as well as with the impaling, as a form of protection, right? He needed a monstrous image, you know?
Yeah.
A boogeyman.
He arose to power at a monstrous time,
But,
right?
well, here's
And-
another thing, though. Consider that his family, the Draculesti, means dragon, the house of the
Yeah.
dragon.
Order of the Dragon. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people forget that Hungary has a huge Mongolian influence in its population, right? And all of Genghis Khan's, as he came across in the later Khans that settled in Hungary, it was a campaign of fear that they pushed out ahead of their warfare. So this was
Right.
embedded in the Hungarian culture. They were the
Attila.
Vikings. They were the
we can't
Vikings
forget the
before they were
Huns.
Vikings. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where we get the word Hungarian from, because they were mostly, there was a huge amount of this pagan blood in there. And
Right.
they used fear campaigns. Fascinating thing about Genghis Khan is the number of battles he actually fought, to the ones where people were so terrified of him they just surrendered.
Right. And we also have the Magyars as well. Like, it's just the Balkans have been one of the most heavily contested places on earth for a long time. For a long time.
But this, victim of their own propaganda thing, it wasn't just Aleister Crowley that did that.
No, exactly.
He was a victim of his own propaganda there as well. Yeah.
Right. You turn yourself into a demon, and then you become a demon far long after you're dead.
That's right.
Another interesting thing about him is they think he had the condition hemolacria, which is he cried blood. He would have tears of blood, which is a condition. Some people could have that condition. Yeah. Whether he had that or not is speculation, but they're saying from his own letters they determined this.
Yeah.
They tested the proteins from his own blood years later. And it's a myth that people have talked about, that he cried blood. But it's a boogeyman. It's a good myth. And it's translated well into modern times, into horror movies, into goth culture, into fashion, into toys. Halloween, once a year, everyone dresses up as Dracula. It became a thing.
And the second most popular, most translated book on the planet is Dracula. And the copyright was given by Bram Stoker to the church, right? So when he died, he didn't give that copyright to his family. He gave it to the church. So the church owns this book of propaganda.
Dracula. Yeah, sure. It's all church propaganda to begin with. Why not? Complete the circle. Right. Bring it home. Yeah. Well, let's see the next image.
Yeah.
Here's another Dracula type boogeyman character. The Gilderais, aka the Black Baron. He was born in a black tower at a castle. In the tower he's born in was called the Black Tower. And more propaganda here. People are saying in modern times, oh, he was a good guy. It's just he wasn't that bad. He didn't kill the kids. He didn't collect their skulls.
It's hard to say. Here's the thing. For the people, for the kind of backlash that he received in his own lifetime after being a hero of the revolution, it's unheard of. It's bloody unheard of. He was up to some heavily naughty stuff. Nobles didn't get punished like this.
He was hanged and burned.
Right? Exactly. Sure. Exactly. So do I think there was propaganda involved? There's always propaganda involved. There's always money to be made, lands to be taken. But this is a horrible human being, And it's also, we got to remember too, that this propaganda, this is the seed for most of the satanic panic in the West. The real seed. Dracula is partially it, but this is the real seed, because he is where the black mass myth really takes hold, because he's accused of performing this Mithraic rites and summoning the devil while ripping apart babies. And this becomes the foundation of a lot of literature. Specifically, we see this in J.K. Huysman's Là-bas, down there, a euphemism for hell. And we also see this in the satanic panic literature of A.E. Waite, which is largely responding to this kind of stuff about gilderais. And of course, with Crowley and others, you know, it kind of just runs away with itself. Even George Bataille, the philosopher George Bataille, talks about
Yes,
gilderais and
the
the
Dark
left-hand
Star.
path,
The
right?
Dark Star.
Exactly.
But you know, the whole 4 tenets of propaganda, which involve killing children, drinking blood, undermining our society, and they're not human, so we can do what we want with them. You know,
Right.
with all the things David Icke speaks about today, were used initially by the Roman state against Christianity. To great effect. So when Christianity became the theocracy, the state religion, they just went, okay, we'll take those 4 tenets of propaganda and we'll use them against anybody. So, I mean, these days, if we ever see those 4 tenets of propaganda used, you've got to go, what are they trying to suppress here? And they have never changed. They drink blood, they kill children, they're undermining our society, and they are not human, so we can do what we want with them. So
that is
they're
such a good
always
point.
the same.
I'm glad you brought that up, you know, because we also have to see, like, the wild thing about Gilderais is that this is a hero turned villain, right? And when we look at the hero Gilderais of the Revolution, what is that character? That character is connected to Jeanne d'Arc. He is the protector of Jeanne d'Arc, and he takes her to the fairy tree. He's so much connected to her mythology, right? And who has so much to gain from his destruction? The French nobility and the English nobility, who are trying to reform France after the revolution, right? So there is some wild satire at play. There's no doubt, right?
If you could hit the next image there.
Yeah. And right at that time too, Joan of Arc's mother is pushing to have her made a saint. And he is funding it. He was funding this, like, you were wrong, church. You shouldn't have killed her because she was a saint. And so, so they're trying to make him look bad. So because he was funding that campaign to get her made a saint. Yeah.
You know, and there's a lot of accusation with the Joan of Arc people in Gilderais of these pagan connections. And I think there may be legitimate pagan connections that the church then satirized into the satanic panic that we see. You know?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the whole prophecy of Joan of Arc is definitely not church or biblical. It's a very old prophecy that this virgin would rise to liberate France. That's not from the church.
To me, that screams Roman Greek mythology. That's Astraea Dike, right? And this is also, you know, this is a wild it's a wild underpinning a current of art and poetry that constantly leads to revolution and empowerment. What's wild about this is we see the same kind of magic behind the propaganda of Queen Victoria. And we've talked about this extensively, but she becomes DK Astraea in the same way that we have this with Joan of Arc, right? This is a classical image of freedom and empowerment in the Western tradition.
So with this image right here, this Joan of Dark image, it's a little special because, well, first I'll tell you, Joan, the reason how she was murdered or killed, her actual crime or punishment was for wearing men's clothing. Because remember, we started off with the image of Sarah as Hamlet. That's part of one of our sub themes is women wearing men's clothing, and we'll see that even later too. But
and this is also essential to that myth of DK Astraea, the Medea character, because when we go through the Median cycle, it ends with her. Well, it begins with her as the innocent virgin who's abducted and cursed by the pirate Jason. And then she breaks free of the chains and she has to travel across the world, save her father. And then she rises and becomes the emperor of the Medes. But we always have to remember in the Greek sense and how they refer to her is in a masculine form. She becomes an emperor, right? She has flipped her pole. She's no longer the innocent virgin. She's now the empowered masculine in that transformational sense. And this is a mirror image to like we see with the divine Attis, where the masculine has to shed, or it has to castrate itself and become pure and imitate the divine mother if you're going to have the pole of that, you have the feminine rising and becoming the Emperor Zeus, rising and becoming the sun, you know, and you're always going to have these kind of parallels, right? It's a twinning. Medea and Dionysus, Attis are twins of each other, Persephone, you know. They're both that rising and dying god. And we see this in the story, you know, Astrea rises and ascends to the stars. After that empire, eventually she sets herself ablaze, returns to the stars. And then the prophecies of Virgil tell us that she'll return. And how will she return? As Saturn, as the Dionysian god who's going to bring back the golden age. She'll return in a different form, not as the virgin Decay, but as the child to come, Harpocrates, right? These are two parallel images. But anyway, I'm going off now.
Yeah. And Dion, the word underneath, do we have a translation for the word underneath her there?
No, but I was going to discuss what's above her, which is the oriflamme. See what she has right there. She's holding a flag, and it's not the fleur de lis, which was introduced after her. What they used to have before was the oriflamme. You see, it looks like a dragon right there. This flag that she has at the top with IHS on it. And if you go to the next image, and I'll show you the oriflamme right there. It used to be the original flag they would take into battle. And when this flag was put in the air, the standard was put up, that meant no quarter. No quarter. That means that you would kill nobles. So originally, you go into battle. You would capture your nobles to ransom them, to get money, to exchange back, to get your prisoners back. But when you saw that flag, like the skull and bones, that meant no quarter. And the oriflamme has ancient connotations. Before, they used to say it was a lance that would shoot sparks, would come out of it. And that's why that one image that I showed before, it has Jeanne d'Arc with the oriflamme and not the fleur de lis. Exactly.
Right.
Go back to the oriflamme.
Serpent tails, right?
Whoa. Yep. And we did another episode about that before. Go to the next image.
And it's a dragon.
Yeah, it's the dragon. And so it's called Draco, the Roman standard. And here's Carolingians, Charlemagne, the descendant emperors. And they have that same type of flag right there, and it's a dragon. What they would do is put a golden dragon's head that had a whistle in it. And when it go into battle, it would make like this eerie sound. And the back of the tail would move around. Now, like the original oriflamme, go to one more image. St. Denis. The reason it was orange and red was because the original oriflamme was dipped in the head of St. Denis when they decapitated him.
I remember you telling me about this.
Yeah. It's from older stuff. And it deals with gilderais, Jeanne d'Arc, and the flags. Because after this, they had the fleur de lis. Things changed after Jeanne.
Yeah, and the Messalene legend, the right to rule through Messalene.
Yeah.
So Messalene was the serpent lady that rose out of the water, and basically it gave the French nobility their right to rule. Because
Messalene,
yeah, Messalene, yeah, she left behind her children, and they became the French kings. So, but that was and she had two tails, like the Starbucks cup. That's Messalene on the Starbucks cup. Always
Otter Goddess. They do Otter Goddess. A lot of different names for the.
Right. It's the French parallel. You see the same thing in the Roman story, right? With the Lupa, right? With Acalorentia tacita, the wolf mother who gives birth to the twins, and you know one, right? Same kind of idea in France, but you're right. It's from the primordial. Always a nymph of the waters, connected to that serpent kind of cult as well. We always get the similar kind of imagery and it's that energy that leads to the kings. I'm always reminded of one of my favorite plays of all time, Aristophanes' Frogs, which just lays it out. In order to become the divine king, in order to have the power of Zeus, you need Basileia, you need that magical virgin, and you need the song of the birds. You need to be able to command the spirits. If you can command the spirits, and then you can get possession, or you can get the ear of the virgin, of the muse, then you can become a profound king. And then you can have a profound lineage. You know?
Yeah, but the Messalene story still applies today. She's still a symbol of victory.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
and
absolutely,
that's
absolutely. Yeah,
that's why Starbucks put her on their cups, because they were going to
yeah.
be the victorious ones. Yeah. So you know,
Yeah.
you can have a flag in battle or a Starbucks cup. What would you have?
Wild stuff.
Yeah.
So before we talked about Catherine and Demichi had the heads. She had a head of one of the princes or kings brought to her. We were talking about the other
She's another
decapitated or
one who's
severed head.
accused, right? Where Gilderais is accused of creating the Black Mass. The other person who gets equal credit often in the literature is de Medici, Catherine de Medici, right?
Yeah. So go to the next image. We'll look at a different Catherine. Because we also talked about Caterina as the White Terra. Well, here's Catherine of Siena,
Oh wow.
whose head was preserved. Right now, we could go see it in Italy. And she's a saint, Saint Catherine. You know, and what's wild about her, her sister was married to a man at one time, and her sister died young. And they tried to marry her to that same man. And she didn't want to get with this dude because she knew he was evil. So she cut her hair off to avoid it. And that's ironic because her nickname, Catherine of Siena, as a little girl, was Euphoricine or Euphorcine.
Euphrosyne.
Yeah,
You're talking about the grace, one of the
yeah,
graces.
of Alexandria.
Joy.
Who she wore men's clothing to enter the monastery.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, how do you say her name?
Euphrosyne.
Euphrosyne, yeah, of Alexandria. She was a saint who also cut her hair and wore men's clothing. And that was a nickname of Catherine of Siena. And here's her head preserved. And is still worshipped to this day in Italy. And she had a wild story too, if you look up her story. But these last couple images, I want to show a couple of things. Go to the next image.
Okay. Oh, sorry. 1 second. Where's that? Here we go.
Here's another image, another relic from it was found in 1279, and this is supposed to be Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
In the south of France, one of the Black Madonnas. And once again, it's a skull that's revered. This is the muse, we could say. People believe that the dragon's tongue or the skull can prophesize, going back to ancient times. And that's why severed heads are a thing. You've seen it in multiple episodes in the Black Madonnas. But I just want to show you some of these skulls of these saints, these women that are famous. And even another one. I mean, I'm sure Shay knows about the Black Madonnas.
Oh yeah. And there's I love the gypsy story about Mary Magdalene and her daughter Sarah Kali, Sarah the Black, which was supposed to be which is supposed to be the daughter of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. So the gypsies are given the right to protect them. So once a year, they march Sarah Kali, who is the ultimate Black Madonna, the daughter of and her statue down to the ocean, and they bathe the statue and then bring it back. But this is, Roman Sinti culture in France, and they come from all over the world, bring all their horses, and it's their big where the marriage vows are taken as well. So you'll do the gypsy marriage contracts at that stage as well. You marry this family to that family because of Sarah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's wild stuff, right? And it connects, that was one of the major pieces of cultural evidence that shows that the Roma people can trace their roots all the way back to the Indian subcontinent. And now most people, including the Roma themselves, believe that they were part of one of these nomadic music groups, right? One of these castes of musicians. And then due to war and other things were forced out of the Indian subcontinent and came into Europe and, evolved over time and became something entirely unique now. So really interesting.
But again, in French culture, these Black Madonnas in France, all associated with that. It's quite amazing. It all comes from all around the world and seems to, again, center on France.
Right.
Yep. Go to the next image. Here I'm going to talk about another saint, Saint Hildegard von Bingen. And they keep her skull too. This is
Oh, I didn't know that.
1179. And
Yeah.
what's interesting about this photo, if you notice, do you see that little flag that's above her head right there?
Yeah, is that an oriflame?
It looks like an oriflame. Yes, it does. It's like an oriflame. That's her getting heaven licking her with the visions, the mystical visions. Now, Hildegard's one of my favorite people. Polymath, spoke multiple languages, wrote cookbooks, herbal books, composed music, had her own monastery, could do everything, anything. And they left her alone. They didn't bother her because they know she had the juice.
Yeah. And she used to write letters to the Pope and say, "You're wrong." And it was like, nobody else did that.
Yeah. No one touched her. The only thing that touched her was the oriflamme, giving her those visions. And now, mind you, this is 1400 years before the oriflame. I mean, 400 years, let's say, before that. So, and then she drew these own paintings herself. She could sing, paint, cook, heal, did mathematics, spoke multiple languages.
She
go to the
created
next
her own language, right? She had that.
Yeah, she did create her own language. We talked about that, a dragon's tongue.
Yeah.
Here's her. They keep her remains, her relics, and supposedly they have her skull that they'll bring out every now and then. And this is in Germany.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, the Hildegard skull's there. And they bring it out every now and then if you're lucky. Because the skulls are oracles. They keep some mystical power. Let's go to the next image. And here's somebody I know that Shay knows about. It's St. Hilda of Whitby. Now, I'll tell you about her one quick thing I didn't know about, that Bram Stoker was influenced by Whitby. That's where he got a lot of his ideas for the castles and stuff, was where she was from.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And she did the snake stones. So Hilda of Whitby was a saint. You see how she has the augury on her staff there?
Yeah.
And below her feet, you see these little curly snakes. Well, go to the next image. I'll show you. They're ammonites. There you go. The famous snake stones. Because her myth is that she drove out the snakes.
Right.
You know, like one of those myths where she had a miracle.
Yeah. Okay, I remember now. She's part of in England, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, these snakes though are these snake stones. Now, that doesn't have that head on there. It doesn't originally come that way. What they were doing, right? So here's how it works. They said if you find an original snake stone, you would break off the head. But originally, that's not how the ammonites come. Yeah. They would craft these little heads and glue them in there. And they became talismanic symbols there in England. Go to the next image. And this is from her monastery there, or from the church, stained glass. And she's holding one of them.
She's got 3 of them.
Yeah, you can see. Remember, we talked about that in other episodes. Yeah. How the women would be holding these chakrams or discs. Here it's an ammonite, and she's getting rid of the snakes, but it seems like she's using the snakes. And as well, she has the augury staff, and the staff is at a perfect elliptical. You know, we talk about the geometry, sacred geometry. So it has that encoded into this as well, the stained glass. And she's wearing black. Normally they would have them wearing colorful or white images. There she is in black with the snakes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and she's the patron saint of learning too. So, you know, it's not a man who's the patron saint of learning in the church. She is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like I said, Bram Stoker was influenced by Whitby because they have ruins there. They have an old abbey, a Roman abbey there. They have some other stuff in. It's a Gothic haven, basically. And that's how part of what brought that to life. Well, let's go to the next image. I have one more image. And this brings us back to the beginning when we're talking about Artemisia Gentileschi, the painter who was also raped. And they tortured her, not the person who raped her. Eventually got him too, but let him go. But eventually she was patronized by the Medicis. Went to Florence. Did several paintings, and the ones we looked at before was because she identified with the goddess Diana and Artemis and would
Right.
encode that into the paintings. She had the beheadings of Salome. Well, here
Yeah,
she is
she
with
has that
Mary
famous
Magdalene.
painting, right, with the
Yep.
head on the plate. Yeah.
Here it's Mary Magdalene with the skull. And that's Jesus' skull.
Mm.
Is the reference there. And I thought because
wow.
we had Sarah at the beginning with the skull, I would have Artemisia at the ending with the skull, her painting of Mary Magdalene.
Wow. Well, she was definitely a true Goth, and right at the heart of that Renaissance, you know, when the cultural humanism and that revitalization of the ancient philosophies is coming to its fore, right? And people are really openly challenging the church, not just hidden in the upper echelons, but now, you know, you're seeing the rising of a new middle class, of the merchant class, that is challenging the status quo and bringing about new art, new ideas, and throwing off the shackles of church. Powerful moment, you know?
Yeah. But the sub theme through all of this that I get from what you've been sharing with us, Dion, is that the persecution of these women that are touched by the muse, women that don't want to marry, like the very first image, you know, why was she kidnapped? Why was she? Her father wanted her to marry somebody and just become a wife. She didn't want to do that. She wanted to go and learn and study, and she didn't want to marry this man, you know, and she rebelled against her father. And all of that persecution was because she wanted to go and learn and study and do her art and her writing. And that was like heretical. Why would a woman need to do that? Just go and marry. And then all of these heads that have been preserved, where they have been touched by that flame of the muse, where they can still give you an oracle. Well, let's take the head off and keep the head, but let's get rid of the rest of the woman. You know. And even Mary Magdalene, like all of these pictures of Mary Magdalene sitting with that's a skull of Jesus, you know, of the Christ. You know, it's you know, it's just a depiction of a woman that's been touched by the muses and still lives with the muses, and they've been persecuted because of it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's what I've been picking up on is the dark feminine, and through history how it keeps showing up and it can't be suppressed. And even here, she's wearing the saffron robes.
Yeah, I see so much, you know, at the heart of it is definitely the feminine, because the feminine is so oppressed, at least at this time across, like at least in the Middle Ages, until we start to see an explosion now. I mean, it's still oppressed now, but what I see too, we have to remind, is that it's also just such a reaction to the shackles, right? It's to all of this forcing of culture and this rejection of the other, you know. It's a reaction to the vilification. You know, why is there such a celebration of the dark, of the satanic, of the evil, of the unknown? Because it is made taboo, because it has become this thing. So because you make it taboo and you cast it into the shadows, you also give it a form of power. And what we see with, one of the things that you see with a lot of these people is they wear, you know, where the satire and the kitsch comes in with goth, and where a lot of this empowerment comes in, is you see these women, you see these queer people, you see these outsiders embrace the negative depictions, wear the black, don the capes, you know, challenge society, and you know, throw it back in your face, you know. And it seems to be so much of that. You know, you're going to say I'm evil, well, I'm going to embrace the evil and make
Catharsis.
it my own, you know.
yeah,
It's a cathartic experience. Catharsis.
Exactly.
yeah. But was it even so much about embracing evil in those days? You know, was it
No, I
just?
think it was
It
about
wasn't.
embracing the other, you know, or being
Yeah,
authentic, you
I
know,
mean,
rejecting that. You play in that evil image that the church places on you in order to subvert it, in order to show that it is ridiculous, you know. You challenge these laws, and then that's the thing. As soon as someone gets away with it, now you can push that Overton window again and again and again. And that's the other thing we see with these women, you know, all of these radical goth women who are always challenging, and like we talked about a lot of those fashion women, like Coco Chanel with the little black dress, you know, that's lingerie just a few years earlier, but after her it's no longer lingerie, right?
But there's
empowerment through it.
I don't know, maybe it's a personal perspective, but there's also this education and art and poetry and writing aspect that goes with these women, like Mary Shelley, all of these, and somehow that terrifies men. Like I'm experiencing this at the moment because I'm doing a community lobby thing where I'm lobbying the government. And I've been writing, letters to governments and getting things done for years. And there's a guy up here who's like, well, I'm a high court barrister. I'm a high court. What's your qualification? It's like, well, my reply to him is, one, I don't need to justify my qualifications. And two, don't be so insecure. He doesn't say it to anybody else. But because I'm a woman and getting these letters done, he seems triggered in a nasty way. And this is what I see historically happening to these women, that have come forward and show that they're capable, that they're intelligent, that they're artistic, that they love writing, that they write and they're going to challenge everybody. All of a sudden, it terrifies the system. It terrifies the men. It terrifies a lot of women as well. Why?
Absolutely.
Why should, we've got all of these historical examples of women touched by the muse. And we see that they have been the rebels that have pushed society forward. Why are we still terrified by them? Aren't we enlightened enough now to no longer make this even a remarkable thing now? Shouldn't we be encouraging that? And the other thing I get from this is it's great at my age to be able to sit down and devote my time to my studies and my art. But to see these young women in history that have done it, this is the virginal thing, these incredibly intelligent young women that are able to do that. Don't play small. I had a thing the other day and they were talking about AI and they were saying that AI has learned to lie and pretend to not be as good as it is in case somebody switches it off. And I just went, AI's a woman. It's to try and fit in. You've got to be left. So, haven't
No, you're absolutely right. And that point can't be stressed enough. Is that this demonization of the feminine is such an ongoing thing. And it's such a heavy weight within our society and our culture. We see this, as someone who's gender fluid and non-binary, right? I've experienced this in my life. Anytime I'm presenting in a feminine way, people, it's like a total flip on how they look at me and treat me and think about me. And just talking to people about gender, it reveals so much. Part of the reason why they don't like people playing with gender is because they want to be able to control and dominate women. They don't view women as totally free persons. They view them as property and possessions. And if I can reject that boundary and take on another boundary, they can't imprison women. Women are people, these things aren't real, and this is such a heavy thing, so, and what you've experienced, you talk to any person, any woman, and they've experienced this and they can see this. And it's just, it's wild, Go ahead,
I know. I think we should be asking why. we have the historical examples. We know it happens. But why? What is it about a smart, intelligent woman that triggers males? Dion, do you have an opinion about this?
Well, in Islam, you put a mask on them. You can't even see. It's not even their mind. They're triggered by even to see their skin at that point. Like with the robes and stuff. Even too much wrist, too much ankle is too much. Even seeing that much, an inch of skin is too much sometimes. With those rules, and that's a mourning costume at that. And we've seen that through these episodes. That outfit that they put on him is a mourning outfit. And so it's the death of the feminine. That's what when I see that outfit on them. All the women we've been talking about spoke multiple languages, could paint, write, sculpt, act, sing, and they influenced movements and artists over generations. You can't silence it. You can try.
Right. I think it's far deeper than just ingrained root and prejudice, and like I think it has to do with these you know, if you're going to try and create a radical, violent power system in which you are dominating, in which you are killing, in which you are destroying, I think it necessitates a radical destruction of the feminine. And the women who thrive within that system, they can't act through a proper feminine lens. You know, they have to become, in a sense, masculine. And this is what we see in our societies, is that there's just this, in order to create these systems of mass dominance and control, where we are brutalizing people, murdering people, genociding people, having these supremacist systems of patriarchal dominance, I think it necessitates it. And I think that we also have to just look at, like, you know, there is a programming, and there is this, you know, we see this even rooted in kind of like, you know, ridiculous liberal forms of feminism, where our society has also vilified men and vilified the masculine, and has created an image where the man is always going to abuse the feminine. Like, this is the justification we see in extreme forms of Islam. We have to hide the feminine because the masculine is a vile evil otherwise and can't control itself. And we've allowed this lie to fester get into the brains of our young male children, you know, and people who identify with that male gender role. And it is so insidious and evil, right? And we need to reject this violence. And I think, as one last point, it's just, I think it's also perpetuated in our current through our current technology in our society, because of the exploitation of women's bodies, and how women have lost so much agency in the digital age, and are just, they're put on display, and they're violently exploited and raped, and there's nothing they can do about it. And then young men as children are exposed to this vile abuse, you know, and we're just, I don't know what we do about all this, you know. I don't know. Yeah,
it's you know, I think we have to like call it out and name it. Like, when somebody is like, when they are afraid of a woman, just say, don't be afraid. You know, that's the way that I treat it. I go, look, you got nothing to be insecure about. Your uni qualifications are far more prestigious than mine. I just do what I do. You know, again, it's also like a stepping smaller, but you have to do that when somebody's a bit insecure. But I wrote a blog in praise of men, you know, because I've had so many beautiful men in my life. and I genuinely believe that if I was walking down the street naked, the majority of men would approach me and go, are you okay? Here's my jacket. Let's get you to some help. You know, the majority of men are good men. I think the men that do foster these excuses that are, you know, if you can see it, you can have it. You know, she's flaunting it.
right.
I mean, that mentality, it shouldn't be about that. Like, I grew up on the Gold Coast, you know, walking in the 70s, wearing a string bikini was almost formal wear. And you know, it wasn't a thing. You know, like, you didn't even look at somebody because they were all walking around in bikinis. But it's that culture of, if this happens, then it's okay for me to be the worst side of myself.
Yeah.
You know, I think.
Yeah. And there's go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, and I think we just have to keep naming it for what it is, because there's beautiful, wonderful men out there. You know, not this whole idea that all men are rapists, rubbish. This beautiful, wonderful. I have 3 beautiful children, 3 beautiful men now, like from 40 to 33, that I've raised to really respect women, you know, and I've got the feedback that they are great men. You know, are they capable of doing naughty things? Yeah. But they don't use that as an excuse. You know, women are not their excuse to do naughty things. They can just do naughty things.
I'm just trying to highlight that in order to have this extreme patriarchal viewpoint, we have to also reduce and destroy men, right? Like, we turn them into a monster in order to imprison women. And it's just the most ridiculous kind of insanity, right?
Absolutely.
And we need to talk about this and put it on full display. You know?
Yeah. And like, I think I'm a fairly, like, even at at 63. I think I'm a pretty feminine looking female, but I get like when I'm in a situation where I'm being political or something like that, I have guys come up and go, "Oh, are you a tranny? Are you a drag queen?" And I go, "No, I'm definitely have had 3 boys. I've definitely got a vagina." So, and it's like there is that quite, what intellectually a person is and is capable of is connected with a gender,
Right.
And why does that terrify people? Well, I mean, it terrifies women as well, but I think it comes down to a basic insecurity thing that people have.
It's about freedom and control and power. I mean, I look at, radical forms of authoritarianism, and they always have to imprison and dominate the woman, because the women are the key to producing the next generation. They're the key to educating the next generation and to maintaining that power base, especially when you get to these more complex societies, right? If you're going to have a white nationalist society where you're going to expel immigrants, well, you're going to have to imprison all the women now and force them to give birth. Otherwise, you're never going to maintain your society. Your population's going to go off a cliff, right? And in these affluent, so we have this inherent thing. If you're going to have these extreme forms of policing and control, it's going to result in the destruction and control of the women, because you wind up creating a military system. The other thing is, like, we need people to be stupid so that we can turn them into cannon fodder and send them to war. We need women to be in prison so that they're producing babies, because educated, free women, many are not going to choose to have babies or not going to choose to have many, because who the heck would, right? Like,
I think you're onto something there. I think that's it. Yeah. The young men need to be cannon fodder, and the women need to be producing more young men to be cannon fodder, and not thinking and questioning. Don't think and question, just do. Yeah.
Right. Just do. Yeah. Handmaid's Tale, as spooky as that is, but that's when you listen to these Christian nationalists and how they talk, that's what they're talking about. I mean,
oh yeah, that's where they would like to take America to, is a Handmaid's Tale. Most definitely.
But this is why
But,
it's so important.
I would like to say one thing though about these barristers you're talking about, these judges, like the English system, and like if you go to court in England, I like to describe one of these judges. So he puts on some high heels. He wears these little lace stockings. He puts on a robe or dress, and he puts on a doily. And they wear a wig, but it's a powdered wig at that, and a little dot. That's pretty feminized to practice lady law. Just saying. Tell the barrister that. And when you see the lady law holding the scales right there with the blindfold. But yeah, the judges have to feminize in order to practice law. They have to become a queen, to become the pharaoh, the feminine pharaoh.
Yeah. Themis is an amazing character in mythology too. So she's not just about being blind justice; she's powerful. So yeah,
absolutely right. Primordial justice. I always think of one of the founding myths of Rome, right? The city that predates Rome is from the Pelasgians, and the story goes that the nymph Carmentis flees from Arcadia with her son Evander, but sometimes it's not Carmentis, which just means the prophetic song in Latin. Sometimes her name is Themis, the Orphic goddess of victory, right? The highest form of victory, or in justice. So this is wild stuff. But yeah, that Themis is a complicated image. And Lady Justice, and this is, I think, why we also see this degradation of that feminine, because the feminine brings justice. It brings communal cohesion. It operates from a, I mean, this is you're getting into certain kind of stereotypes, but that masculine energy is about this kind of dominating force, and the feminine is more about this collaborative force. And in order for that dominating force to dominate, it has to be in prison. It has to control the other.
Yeah.
when I look
No,
at
you go.
matriarchal societies, like one of the societies Dion and I looked at was the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois Confederacy. And I talked about this before, but one of the things they would do is if people acted out, they would have to go sit with the grandmothers, and they'd have to go and listen. The people would just talk to them and try to convince them of the badness of their ways. And they would sit and have to listen to these women until the women deemed that they were okay to return. And that was the only form of punishment that these people had. They had no capital punishment, they had no prisons, and this was a large, complex society. All they did was sit people down and talk to them. Sometimes it took a long time, but that's what they did.
Yeah. Yeah. Themis was like Zeus's first wife, and Zeus had to marry her. He had to. But her children were the Horai and the Morai, so the fates and the seasons, so the cycles, the natural cycles. And if you did something wrong, her children chased you around. But yeah, she's one of the titans that came into the Olympians, and all the Olympians were scared of her and her children, right? Still. So, incredibly powerful. She wasn't blind, like, she made sure justice happened, but she saw everything. It always surprises me that the courts portray her as blind, because she was like Zeus's all-seeing aspect. So,
right.
Yeah.
She saw everything. The thing is that it's fair, right? It's fair. It just sees things with that absolute reasoned clarity, without judgment, and just weighs things as they are. And that is like impossible for us, apes to comprehend. So you have to put it in this higher form of sight, I mean, it's also a later iconography. You don't see it in the earlier icons of her. But this is also like getting back to the Goth stuff, right? This is why we need these kind of subcultures where we are challenging the ridiculous constraints that society places on us. We're exposing the hypocrisy. We're playing in the darkness. We're breaking free of those patriarchal constraints, and we're revitalizing and engaging in those creative works. Like the thing that we're seeing with all of these people, male, female, what have you, is that these people are all inspired and they're all challenging the status quo, right?
Yeah, and the Goth culture should be very aware of its amazing queens that it's had.
Yeah.
The women that have upheld it, its structure, and ushered in these changes. It's matriarchal and wonderful.
Right. Beautiful stuff. Any last things you want to say about the Goth culture, Dion?
Well, we still have more episodes coming, but it won't necessarily be goth. But we will get into vampirism and fang smiths, and how you can acquire a set of fangs if you want out there, and Anne Rice novels, Louisiana
you were
voodoo.
telling me about these. Okay, so a while ago you were telling me Dion is a goth, old school goth, and he's always been interested in this kind of stuff. And one day, maybe like 4 months ago, you showed me this crazy cult stuff. These guys, get this, Shay, they make custom fangs, and it's on the surface, it's presented as people who are into cosplay and into goth, right? But under the surface, this is a psychic vampire sex cult, and the transforming of these fansmiths into literal godmen in like the worst, most wild kind of way.
Well, what they've done, they've taken J.K. Hoisman, A.E. Waite, Margaret Murray,
Anne Rice,
Buster Crowley books, and then Anne Rice packaged that up. She did a good job, I'd have to say. Anne Rice is an incredible writer.
Oh, yeah,
but before she did that, she was doing books about pony play, about BDSM and horses and stuff like that. So she incorporated that too into the vampire stuff, but she mixed upon also Martinism. When you get this French cultism with Haitian, with voodoo, and there's a whole cross world out there that's alive and well. So the modern vampire world is they have houses, and it's like a lead vampire. It's almost, some people could say it's cosplay, but some of these people take it seriously. And there are people who take blood different ways. It might be they can cut and drink it a certain way, or they got their little fangs, or could be the spectrum from make believe to real. And they believe it. And they've crafted their own mythology and books and heroes and icons. And it's a whole world. It's a whole community out there. And it's influenced by all this stuff right here, whether they know it or not.
Yeah. There's I wrote some articles in I think Spellcraft magazine, interviews with people in the cultures about what they were doing, and there are there's two particular ones that I would love to share with you if you'd like me to be, if we can get my sound sorted out, if you want me to be involved in that.
Always.
But
You're welcome.
and they actually sent me like an honorary initiation into one, but it's really interesting. It is actually almost about picking a person, and you cultivate this child from, like, you adopt this child till it gets to a certain age, and then they do this ritual where they transfer the soul from this one into the child. So yeah, and this, like, they sent me a whole instruction manual on it. So
yes. You don't want to mess that up.
Creepy stuff. Whoa.
I know.
Well,
So,
the whole world out there.
Shay, I wanted to ask you though, while we're on this topic, as a psychic, what do you think about psychic vampirism and psychic vampire attack? Because that's all caught up in this culture where these people are trying to influence and dominate others, sometimes without their consent or no.
Oh my goodness. Yes, and it's become epidemic in our society. I think what supports the vampire culture is the victim, right? You can't have a vampire culture if there aren't people that want to be the victims. But what happens is our society at the moment is being steered by victims, not by strong people. And it's the easiest thing in the world for a victim to suck energy. And that's why people get addicted to being the victim and playing the victim in a culture. Is, oh, pull me, give me more energy. And then all of a sudden, these people go, why don't people want to stay? I mean, martyrs get nailed to a cross for a reason, because in the end you get sick of them, because they take so much energy from you, they literally will make you sick.
No, that's such a good point. That's such a good point. That victimization energy is the Nine of Swords, cruelty in the tarot, right?
Yeah, and it's becoming so. People have forgotten, how to go out and recharge their own energy. The whole thing about adulting is we are all born suckling from our mothers, but at some point we stop suckling from other humans. And you need to go out and draw your energy from the largest living thing we will ever be in contact, which is planet Earth. Right? She gives us endlessly. She gives limitlessly to us. And when people live in victim culture and they just want to suck, because people think the vampire is victimizing, right? But these victims are steering from the bottom. They're getting their energy back from the
There's
vampire.
a term we call that control from below.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh gosh, you got to bring it back to the wild stuff, Dion.
Yeah, but
but that's what it comes down to. It's if you're not consciously getting what you want, your subconscious will go out and get it for you.
Yeah,
and you could become a victim to get it, whatever it takes. If you could be the protagonist, the antagonist, whatever, you'll still get what you need.
But this is something that is so profound that you're bringing up, because we see this victimization in our society in such an extreme way. As soon as you start to go to the extremes of the polarization, whether the very far left or the very far right, you start to get this wearing on of the chains, and I'm so oppressed. And then you use that oppression to justify lashing out and attacking of the other, of shaming and of violence. And, and this has come to an apex in our current modern moment with a literal ongoing genocide, justified through the extremes of self-victimization in the worst way I have ever seen.
So well put.
We need to reject that energy with the totality of our being. It is so gross. Look at it on display.
Can I just get a clip of you saying that? You just said that so well. That was very well said. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Shay. Yeah, no, you remind me, because this is true of this moment. When you're in that energy where you think that the world is going to hit you, then you're going to hit first. But if you hit first, it's your fault. You know, you're
Yeah.
the one causing the violence.
That's
Right.
right. And this
It's
justification.
nuanced. It's nuanced beyond nuanced at the moment. That's how we're going to
Yeah.
grow as human beings. It has to be
Yeah.
that in your face.
And look, I don't know, but all of the organizations, I don't think I can say the word without us having problems, that go out and publicly victimize people to get on the media. Don't they realize that they are painting a target on the back of their own people, because they will make them hated and somebody else is going to want to victimize them, you know, and it just goes around. And, you know, then they're the victim, and then they will, you know, attack those ones. And
We call
you
it
know,
here Hatfield and McCoy. That's the Hatfields and McCoys right there. And they've been playing it out. We're caught up in it for thousands of years. You know what? Enough. I'm off the train. It's good. I'm okay now.
This reminds me of a conversation I was having with my wife, where we were talking about just, you know, the current kind of moment in America and what we're seeing. So, okay, you know, whether or not there was real anger is besides the point. The shame and the culture of anger that went against, you know, the masculine and the white culture and the Christian culture got weaponized and vilified and parodied to the point of insanity, to the point now where we've seen this swing to the extreme far right in this radicalization moment. We see all of these people turn victim, right? All of these white men turn victim, and now we're seeing that cruelty on full display. But that victim was also brought about by another victimization. It's like two groups trying to out-victim each other in the most ridiculous, absurd kind of way. Everyone is saying that I'm the victim, and therefore you should listen to me more. It's this disgusting identity spook politic, you know, where everyone is, whether you're identifying with your Christian religion or your white skin, or you're identifying with your feminine gender or your queerness, you're in an identity. You're a victim. You're part of this problem, you know. And for a long time, we relished in the degradation of a certain class, and then that class rose up and rebelled, and now we're all living through it, you know.
Absolutely. And at the same time,
before I say one thing, I gotta bounce right now. So I'd like to say thank you for a good episode, and remind everyone to like, subscribe, and share, leave comments, and get off the victim train before it's too late.
Right.
Absolutely.
Much love, Dion. Thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's just when they play, when sections of society play the victim, it's like trying to suck the energy out of all the rest of us, you know.
Yeah.
And there will be a backlash. There will be a backlash. You know, people will get sick of it. Right?
They will get sick of it.
Yeah, nobody will have their neck sucked forever. You know?
And you know, people need to recognize that when you wear that victim energy, eventually you will be victimized. You know, it's like it's you know, it's, to me, I look at it, it's you're casting magic upon yourself. You know,
Well,
you're telling a story, and now that story is going to come true. Why would you do such a thing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've just had a situation in Bondi, Australia, without saying any trigger words that will get us banned. But we've had two groups that have historically, for millennia, genocided each other.
Right.
Right. And they've taken turns at being the victim.
Right.
And they are painting targets on their own back. You know, both of these groups. You know, it's like, can't you see with the horrible things that you're doing that you are victimizing in the end your own cultures?
Yeah.
You know, by playing victim.
You're turning yourself into your worst nightmares. You're leading to your own persecution and isolation, right? You guys are becoming the problem, you know? And this is the thing.
And then wanting the rest of society to take sides and give me energy here, give me energy here. Guys, if you haven't been able to sort it out for millennia, I reckon that they should take the holy city, all right, take it away from everybody, give it to God, and you're only allowed to live there if you're nice people. If you commit a
Right.
crime against humanity, you can leave. It's that simple. If you're going to be holy, you can live there. If you're not going to be holy, go away.
What can we do differently? I mean, there's a couple, that's a really important question to ask here. How do we break free, of a culture of victimization, especially when we have a culture that rewards people for, celebrating their own, like there's something to be said about accountability and recognizing, like you were bringing up what happens to you as a woman, and that is real and that is justified and needs to be acknowledged. And there are people who have it far worse because of their situations. But that doesn't mean, that we elevate one opinion over another because they meet so many different crossroads of, and like that we celebrate victimhood,
Wow. Absolutely.
I don't know how we avoid this.
I'll never be anybody's victim, but it's just interesting that he tries to make me that. And I just keep going, look, mate, we're supposed to be on the same team. You don't need to be insecure. And I just have to name it, because when somebody's behaving like that, it's their insecurity. Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
I'm not going to be less. I'm not going to be less. How about you get up here with me? Yeah.
Like my wife works a job that isn't traditional for a woman, and she's constantly getting shit, and constantly getting doubt from both men and women, usually with men it's worse, because then there's that performative aspect, right, where they're gonna follow her around and make sure she's doing a good job, but this is like just a thing. This is just a thing. So these kind of oppressions are real. This is the, I always bring everything back to the tarot. And I always think about it, the tarot is always telling us, it's like, the issue you're facing may be actually happening to you, but are you thinking about this in a way that is beneficial? Is all this anger and frustration and fear helpful? Is making yourself a victim? Is lashing out at the universe, doing anything about the situation you find yourself in? And almost always it is not. We want to try and face things as they are. We want to accept ourselves in the moment. Yeah, if you've been hurt, then you need to go out and receive justice. And there's importance in trying to achieve justice. But, we don't want to get caught up also in these spooks of identity, these ridiculous causes that then exist beyond our ego, that get us caught up in this, these performances. And again, it becomes this us against them violence. So much of this to me seems like it's just like they're trying to divide us. They're trying to get us caught up in investing our time in nonsense.
Absolutely. And it all comes back down to personal empowerment, whether that's through education, through having enough money to sustain yourself, having enough wisdom to sustain yourself, empower yourself. If you're feeling like a victim, what do you need to do to empower yourself? Don't expect somebody else to do it for you. Empower yourself. What do you need to do? Yeah, that's really what it comes down to.
Absolutely. There's also this thing too that we need to confront, that I see, especially among, a lot of affluent Westerners, and something that a lot of young people struggle with, is this rabid kind of narcissism. And this, you live in this kind of affluence, and you expect the world to be easy. And then when you fail to achieve, you lash out at your, wow, there you go. But, you get all these people, the truth is, affluence breeds a lot of mediocrity. So you get a lot of people, they don't focus in their youth. They're given so much love and support from their parents. They have everything. They go through life without a care or worry. Then all of a sudden they find themselves 35 and they're nowhere, and they're angry, and they're frustrated, and they're disconnected. And then they get politically radicalized. Like, this is just something I've seen among so many people that I grew up with.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what is this? What is this ridiculous, they blame their parents and the affluence and the loving support of their parents, rather than take accountability for their own mediocrity, rather than recognize that life is not going to hand you stuff, I don't know.
It handles your hurdles, and you have to overcome them. But it's really interesting that I think it was 70% of generational wealth disappears in the second generation, and by the third generation, it's gone. So
Right.
that wealth, if a person doesn't figure out how to be a value producer for themselves, and this is what part of being empowered is, we have to create that sense of value for our own life, and then other people will find a sense of value in it, and then we exchange that value, whether it's with education or money or some other form of value
Or
exchange.
service, yeah.
All right. So we have to create that sense of value, and I find that there's two polarized things. Like, there is the people that expect to always be given the wealth, and then there's people that expect a redistribution of wealth when they haven't produced any value themselves. So, it's maybe a parent produces that wealth and you expect to be given it.
Right.
You've got to learn, but you can't get a handout from other value producers either, unless you've produced value. Production results in this, what I call a money go round. You see it in nature, and that's the whole thing about birth and death in nature, is that you produce this value, you give into society, and then eventually it goes back into the ground again and gets recycled. It's no good if it's stagnant. It's got to continue to cycle around, right? And if you're not producing value, you're not in that cycle. You're not in the absolute flow of nature. And you got to. So if people are finding that their life is hollow, ask yourself that question: what value do you produce? Have you written something today that people find value? Have you sung a song? Have you created a garden? Because gardens get back to you so quick. First thing I always do when I move to a new place is produce a garden that will sustain me. And even if you're in a flat, you can produce that on a veranda with a few pots. What do you do that produces value? Because as soon as you do, you'll start to find that meaning comes into your life. What is it that you are going to do? Art, creativity, but something that people want. They want to exchange. So it's great writing poetry, but if it's not something people want to read, so you've got to have that exchange happen. So there is creativity we do just for ourselves, great. But then if you want to exchange that value, it's got to be something that somebody else finds valuable as well.
Right. You have to create value, and you have to fulfill, I always think too, a lot of this relates to, I love Bob Dylan, and there's that song, you got to serve somebody. Everyone serving somebody. Everyone is connected and needs support. Not only like this is in the tarot, right? It's that magic of the pleasure card, right? Love and reciprocity, mutual flow, right? If you're giving freely, then you can receive freely, and then you're supporting each other, right? And that's kind of what we want to be. And as you're saying, right, you also in this universe, we have to be creating and generating, so we've got caught up in our society, or just, a lot of our societies entered into this Gnostic trap where we're no longer connected to the earth. We view ourselves as different, that nature and reality is not something to be connected to. But so much about life is about producing, creating, manifesting in that generative power to ensure that life continues. Like, that's where you really find purpose, when you're creating something into the future, when you're building for the future, when you're supporting the next generation. If you're not doing that, what are you doing?
That's right. And we do that with our children. But when our children grow up and start doing it for ourselves, that's why people experience the empty nest syndrome. They suddenly realize, so they do have to then find another form of value as well. So it's not like we just do children or we just do a garden. We need to do something constantly that gives us value.
Constantly. And value comes from producing, creating something, and being in community, serving community, right? If you create something that can help someone, now you've got value, real value.
They want it. They want it.
Right?
They want to exchange something for it.
Yeah. And you made a really good point, because like, it's art, so much about being in the magical field is about being an artist, and you have to put yourself out there and prove to the world that you have something to offer, that you have something powerful, you know. And this is something a lot of people fail to do. This is what separates the real artists from, you know, the hobbyists. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just kind of a reality, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I've got all my little businesses that I run, but
Right.
the coffee shop down the road has asked me for some of my chocolate coated strawberries, you know, and I get so much joy of seeing people come in and want those chocolate strawberries. And he's like, oh, what do you want? And it's there's Australia with our health laws, it's a legal nightmare. I say, well, look, that's a 3 beer plate. Because they serve beer. Yeah, okay, that's a 3 beer plate, that's a 6 beer plate. So we do an exchange like that. And I love that. I think that's great. You know, if I had absolutely no money, I'd be making jam, you know, I'd be, you know, just doing little things for people. Let me fix a hole in your pants. So there's always a way to get exchange. And that's one thing that going to Africa taught me. Like I worked for a while in South Africa. I was invited over there, and we were taking money that was being given to us by the Norwegian government to buy land to give back to the Zulu, because the Zulus still aren't, well, when I was there, they still weren't allowed to own land in their own country. So apartheid was not over. It was not over. And I gave away nearly everything I had. I took over with me while I was there. But the kids in the street are so amazing. Like they'll come up and they'll go, do you want to buy a cigarette? And I don't smoke. And I go, no. And I said, why are you selling cigarettes? And they go, because I want to go to school. And they have a plan that if they sell all these cigarettes, they can buy a packet. And then they can sell all those cigarettes in the packet. And then that gets them like a month at school where they can then get an education. Or they'll take tins out of the garbage and they cut them and turn them into like little animals. Now they'll mash up glass bottles, and right beside the road they will mash up all this broken glass, make little dents with their different sized fingers, put a straw in the middle, and they make these beautiful glass bead necklaces. I must have bought heaps of those. And there's always a way for them to exchange value, and every child has a plan over there. Like the kids know they've got to be responsible for themselves. You know, if I'm going to get here, I've got to do something. And it was so refreshing to see that in Africa and be able to be a small part of helping some of these people achieve their goals.
What I see that happens a lot here in the West, at least in Canada where I am, is we're having a generation that's raised largely without parents, because the parents are working 24/7, or they're in this self-fulfilling energy where they're out doing their own thing. And then the youth are being raised through entertainment, and they're dedicating themselves to entertainment. And then it comes a point when they're no longer can be supported by their parents, and they've never developed any kind of skills. They're not working in the world a lot of the time, you know, and they've been in this mode of, you know, in our modern culture, right? Like you have so much entertainment at your fingertips and so much distraction. And we see a generation that's all like, you know, this is something that I've been dealing with my whole life, is I have ADD, right? ADHD, sorry. And it causes me to like hyperly move, you know, why I've been a drummer. But like, I see this coming more and more and more and more. And then a lot of these kids not knowing how to handle it, you know, especially with like cell phones, where they're wasting their whole lives away. They're like, I'll get to it eventually. And they're playing video games, you know, and this is just such a modern thing of our, you know, if you're all distracted, how can you create something beautiful? How can you create anything? How can you be of service or manifest wealth? How can you do anything?
And that's the hard thing as a parent. Like we want to give to our kids, but at some point you have to let them know that they have to earn. They have to produce value. They have to exchange. Okay, yep, all right. You want a new computer game? You want a new, like my son's huge IT guy in a Fortune 500 company, and he was always after a new game or a new piece of computer software. And so we'd sit down and we'd work out a plan. You know, okay, so you need this amount of money. Okay, so that's going to require you doing this amount of jobs for this period of time. And I'd even do it at Christmas. You know, how much do you want to spend on presents for your friends? I want to give all these people presents. Okay, so we're going to need $20. So that will give you $2 each for each of these presents. So how are we going to earn that? So it's a responsibility of a parent to teach this. Right? And at times, you know, we've got to work out that we've got to take that away from them. I think it's becoming too much of a convenient thing for a parent to just go, here's an iPad, stop bothering me. You know, you've got to make that time. You've got to prioritize that time. I used to work away with my kids, but I'd work away. I was fortunate enough to be able to work in a field for 1 week a month that let me pay all my bills for the month. So as a single parent, I could spend 3 weeks being a full-time parent, and then we had no pay for one week. My kids still resent that 1 week. You know, you're never going to make them 100% happy.
Right. And this is why it's so hard, you know, but like, it's amazing that you were able to work that out. But, you know, what I see with a lot of my peers is just this, you know, they would wish, you know, it's like the iPad becomes a necessity, right? And it's like, when can they spend time with their kids when they're constantly paying medical bills? You know, as we're, you know, and they don't have secure employment. They're working in a gig economy. You know, they got 5 or 6 different jobs and they don't know if any of them are going to pay. And this is kind of what you're seeing with a lot of the younger people, you know, and I feel like a lot of the older generations are not aware of how dire the situation is starting to become, you know, because it's like even the good parents, how can you be a good parent if you have to work all the time to provide, you know?
Yeah. And there like, you have to make, like, if you love your children, you have to make that time, even if it's only a little time, even if it's only a little time.
You know, I mean, they're going to do something, of course, every parent will, but, you know, I feel like so much of this issue is caused by just this, you know, I don't know, the massive crisis of affordability, you know, at least in America. Yeah.
And the parents are tired and they want to do their own downtime on entertainment as well.
Everyone needs that. Yeah.
But
you know,
but you do have to go, okay, we are spending this time together without devices. We are going to talk, you know, we're going to sort this out. You know, you've got to dedicate that time, even if it's like, okay, we're putting a fence around. I have a half an hour between going to these jobs. This is our time. And the kids start to look forward to it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. My dad worked 5 jobs. He had like businesses and service stations, milk runs, and a vitamin company. And I used to ask him to come to the movies with me. He went, no, I'll go to sleep. But I used to go and work with my dad. That's how I ended up spending time with him. I used to go to work with him and found out about work that way. So
yeah, I went to work with my mom, you know, at a young age. This is kind of things that happen sometimes, but like that in many ways, you know, is not necessarily a bad thing. As you know, you learned a good skill and you got to spend time with your parents. You know, I don't know. I feel too like, you know, a major issue that we've seen in our society is just also the loss of community, the loss of community spaces, the loss of proper public education. You know, when everyone, you know, in a classical society like you were in Africa, you know, the village raises the family. You know, everyone is kind of involved in these kind of things. And in our modern society, everyone is isolated and expected to do this on their own, and they got no support. You know, so it's like part of the problem is, of course, the parents, but like so much of it is also just on this society that has gone rabid individualist, rabid hyper-capitalist, and everything is running away with itself. You know,
it does. Like the big ethnic families here in Australia, where they all support each other, is just wonderful to see. I mean, they're lovely, loving families, and you know, they all work together to get one person a house. Then they'll all work together to get the second person a house. You know, and all the kids are looked after, the kids are loved, and that's nice to see. But community is key. If we can reestablish a kind of community, you know, even though it may not be a traditional community, we've got to find our own community. As a single
we have
mum,
to remake it in the modern age.
Yeah, as a single mum, I love my other single mums because then I could go to the beach and have a swim because one of us would sit on the beach with the kids while the other one went and had a swim. So,
Right.
you know, simple things like that. And like my very first business, like I became Queensland Businesswoman of the Year, was I set up a domestic service and handyman business by accident because I needed support as a single parent. So I was getting these people to work with me and I didn't have enough work to keep them employed the whole time. So I started sort of pimping them out to all my friends. And then all of a sudden it was a big business. It went national and then
Oh, wow.
international. Yeah. And it was by helping people find work, but supporting other people with stuff that they didn't. And all I was doing was taking like a 10% in the middle, just for making a few phone calls and getting work for these other people. And there is always a way. Like if you need this, I couldn't find it, so I had to go out and create it myself. So if you need this support as a parent, like if there's other parents out there listening to me, go out and create it. Find someone who will work with you, then find other people for them to work with. And then all of a sudden you end up with a business as well as support. You know, this is exactly what it was the first of the domestic service handyman agencies in Australia. If I'd kept it, it would have evolved into like, do you have Airtasker over there?
No.
All right, it's that kind of thing, or Fiverr, you know, where you have an agency.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fiverr,
Yeah. So,
That's
but
cool.
it was that sort of thing, and it's good. So there are solutions, and you just have to think a bit outside the box, and don't think no solution is a silly solution if it's a solution. But giving up and hiding is never, you know, and by hiding, I mean getting yourself distracted. I'm ADHD too, and so is my youngest son. And I've always never realized we had a problem until he came back to me one day and went, "Why don't you give me some treatment for my ADHD?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't think it was different because you're just like me." So, but it's always been my superpower. I need a little bit less sleep than other people. I can get things done a lot quicker in a day. You know, I get more accomplished than most people do in a week. You know, because if you're ADHD, use it positively instead of just allowing yourself to get distracted with your media. Go,
Right.
okay, I'm going to do this first. Oh, I've done it. Okay, I need to do that second. Okay, I've done that. Okay. And then, you know, you'll be surprised.
But this is the thing. You meet these, you know, you talk to some of these young people and they don't have any concept of time or how to make plans. You know, they're in this, like, I don't know. It's like that goldfish brain. I don't know how else to describe it, you know? And it's just wild when, like, you know, I have a couple friends who are teachers. And I was talking to one of the things with me, right? Growing up, okay, I have dyslexia as well. So it was really hard for me to learn how to read. I didn't learn how to read until like grade 3 or 4, and I had to get extra help. But then I became like a voracious reader and like an obsessive reader. And this has been like the saving grace of my entire life. Any kind of good that I've gained is because I've done the reading, basically. But you know, when you're looking at a lot of these young people, a lot of them don't have the attention span or even the knowledge base to even to engage with this kind of stuff. And this is wild to me because we're in this moment where, like, there's more access to information than ever before, right? We have everything at our fingertips, and yet the vast majority of us are incapable of appreciating it or understanding it, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, everything works out in the end one way or another. And I don't say that to be a platitude. I mean, if they don't learn how to get out of goldfish mentality, they will die and things have worked out.
That's true. That's
you
true.
know, so, you know, either you do it, guys. I mean, and it's good to have these public conversations about this because you've got to do it, guys. And if you don't learn how to do it, your life will be short and not very fulfilling. And, you know, that might sound depressing, but the alternative is if you do it, your life will be long and full, and you will have a long life because you're looking forward to the next day because you haven't done everything that you wanted to do today. You've got to get up tomorrow and, wow, I've got to do this. I mean, let me give you some idea. Like you say, you played the drums.
Mhm.
I'm a percussionist in a band.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah. At 63, we're putting the band back together.
Beautiful. That's amazing.
Yeah, and that's where we're going after this. We're going to band practice. Then I'm helping my girlfriend with an app. Well, we're going to do some auditions for a movie. I also work in the movies. I'm helping my husband with some stuff with his aged care. I'm doing lobbying the government at the moment. So I've got some paperwork to do with the government. And what's the other thing? Oh, we're putting in our application to be stunt performers at the moment. Both my husband are. So that's what I'll be doing today. Most people would do one of those things in a day. I may not get that all done, but if I don't get it done today, it'll be done in a couple of days. You know, I always overestimate the amount of shit I can do in a day. And I always try and cram too much in, but that's not a bad thing. You know, some people go, oh, that's the terrible thing about ADHD. No, it's not. I made sure, like, I had a barbecue yesterday, fed a whole heap of people, cleaned up the kitchen before I went to bed because I knew I was getting up at 5 a.m. this morning to do this with you. Right. And then I had to do all the rest of the stuff. Yeah. So, guys, you don't have to do as much as me. It might sound exhausting. I love it. I mean, and in between all of that, I will go for a 4K walk through pristine cloud forest here. But you don't have to do all of that. Just pick something for today that will give your life meaning. Switch off your devices and go and do it. And you'll be surprised what you get done. And it gives your life that meaning. You've done something, and also you're exchanging value. You know, so you're making your life better. So yeah, ADHD is a superpower. So congratulations to all you people who have ADHD. If you learn how to use it, you're better than a Marvel superhero. But your life, But if you have other talents, work with those talents.
Right. You gotta know yourself and figure out who you are and find out where you flow and where you rise, what works for you. You know, we all have something to offer. The question is, what can you offer? What do you love? And and pursue that. The other thing is that you got to cultivate the self, right? You got to cultivate, whatever you do well, do it with passion, do it with love, and continue to grow, continue to change, right? So often we become complacent, work becomes something that we have to do. It's this prison, it's this slave labor. And I put in my 8 hours, I check out, and then I come home, and my real life is a life of consumption, right? And then you're caught in this stagnant cycle. And this is where you see so many people in our modern day. And I think it's like we need to empower ourselves and be inspired and find something that gives us meaning and hope, and don't check out,
Yeah, if you're working for the man, you are getting consumed, right? You have become a fantastic product for somebody else. But you know what? That works for a lot of people. That's where their value exchange is. But if you can create something of value for yourself, that
if you can
exchange
find fulfillment in it,
fulfillment. But also, when you exchange that with other people, you create that community. You create value, your world gets bigger, your wealth increases, your wisdom increases as well. It's
right.
Yeah.
You can develop real skill and mastery. I think about often, you'll see these people, like one of the guy, there's this guy on the internet I've been following lately. And he makes this Japanese rice, omo rice, which is like this egg fried rice. And it's one of the most difficult dishes to make. And he's like this crazy character. He's got this wild hair, and he makes fried rice. And I saw an interview with him, and what it was for him is he got into cooking because he didn't fit in traditional Japanese society. Traditional Japanese society is like, you got to be Mr. Clean Cut. You got to do your thing. Well, he went off and got into the cooking world because they didn't have that same kind of rigidity. And then he found his niche, perfected it. And now he's world famous and respected. And he is, radically himself and in a culture which usually doesn't like that. And this is now someone
No.
who's celebrated for being themselves, you know?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
whatever you find yourself doing, if you can master it and make it your own, now
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's empowering, right?
Yeah. But you don't even have to master it. I'm sure there's
Right.
people that make better chocolate strawberries in the world. You know,
Yeah.
I just love
No,
it.
for sure.
And I swap it for beers. I'm happy.
Yeah. That's true.
Uh,
That's true.
yeah. So
Yeah.
as long as you do something that somebody else wants.
You're right.
You know?
You're right. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. If you can cook, you know, maybe your neighbor who is working really, really hard, if you cook twice as much, you can exchange it with them to do some babysitting, you know. So you just got to think that little bit larger, that little bit outside the box, and you all of a sudden your life's going to be different. Yeah,
Mhm.
but it's
You've
never
gone
been
off on a
easy.
wild tangent here now.
Yeah, but it's never been easy. I think this is that radical change. Like I think the goth
Mm,
culture is still involved in that because it's never been easier to do this. You know,
absolutely.
there's so many tools. You know, we have the ability to be able to create community with our media as well. You
Yeah.
know, so these things that we are craving, we have these tools. Like if I had these tools 40 years ago in business, I would have done even more than what I did then. You know?
Right.
So yeah, because we've got some fantastic tools now, and they just you know, just take advantage of it. Do something. You
Do
know,
something creative. Right. Yeah.
just
You know, and going back to this, the goth scene, right? Like that is creating your own culture, creating your own community and family, creating art for yourself, creating your own ecosystem that ensures so much about, you know, like when I was involved, you know, as a youth, so much in my early adulthood, I was really connected to punk and to ska, and I was involved in putting on shows, and I played in several bands, and that was my life for a long time until COVID. And when you're doing that, it's like the whole thing exists to support the music. You're creating an ecosystem and a monetary exchange of all these different types of art. It's like the band is only one aspect of that. For that band to get there, there's all these other individuals. There's all these other, you need the sound guy, you need the security, you need the bartenders, you need the promoter, you know, and I got involved in all that behind the scenes, and that's where the real culture is made. You know, like everyone celebrates the band, but what about all the people making the zines? What about all the people putting up the stickers, you know? And that's where you're really building something, and you're coming in to create a community, you know,
yeah.
supporting each
And
other.
one of my daughter-in-laws does graphic design, and we did some gothic pictures of her and put it on a magazine cover. There are, like, if people have a beautiful gothic aesthetic, like if they're into the gothic aesthetic, there is such an opportunity for to be involved in graphic design, be it, you know, model photography. Yeah, at the moment, I don't know how it is in Canada, but the film industry is exploding here in Australia as it fails in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine that that's spreading to Canada as well.
Okay, Canada has one of the largest film industries in the world. If you're in Toronto or if you're in Victoria, like it's just Canada's so huge. So it's like way far away from me. If I was in Toronto, I would be an extra, you know, because it's like there's just always films going on there. And you know, Toronto is every major American city. And any Canadian can tell you who's lived in Toronto. We see it everywhere. And it's hilarious.
All right. So, like, if you've got a beautiful Gothic aesthetic, take some photos, send them into your local extra agency, wherever it is, and they say, stand here, stand there, then they feed you. It's just a great day with a community of creative people. Everybody's always talking about creative stuff behind set. So if you love that, go and do it. I mean,
right.
You know, that creates value in art. You know, a film is the greatest collaborative art piece you can possibly work on. You know, thousands of people to make one piece of art, you know, and all of these people are hugely talented. And if you don't feel you are, work as an extra and your talent ratio will come up because you just absorb it from everybody else. Go and do it. It's so easy to do.
Yeah. Right. Create
Yeah.
alternative spaces, embrace life, be your
Yeah.
beautiful self, and share it with the world, right?
Yeah. And that way we'd be making the goth culture grow. Imagine all these beautiful goth people moving into movies. It'd be lovely.
There you
Yeah.
go. Well, I
Yeah.
think we should wind down here, Shay. We're coming up just over 2 hours. But thank you so much. This has been beautiful. I'm glad
It's
that we
gone
can
past so
sort
quick.
out your audio.
Well, yeah, it's a creative workaround. We've got a creative workaround with 2 screens, but hey, because I couldn't hear Dion. So,
Right.
but I don't know. Maybe it's my microphone. We'll try and get it sorted out for next time if you want me back again.
Of course, we always want you back, and that would be fun. We can dive into vampires and psychic wildness and creepy cults, you know.
Yeah, cool. All
All
right, my
right.
darling. All right,
Well,
love to
everyone,
you.
all the love to you, Shay. Everyone, make sure you go subscribe to Magic Magazine. You can find all of Shay's links in the description below. And come back next week when we're going to be diving into weird vampire cults, whatever Dion has in store for us. All right, everyone. Much love and take care. Till next time. Bye.